In the dim blue glow of his room, Kazuya is hunched over his setup, controllers gripped tight. He reflects on how becoming the absolute strongest in this virtual world was his entire reason for living. The scene shifts into the game's peak intensity as he faces the Labyrinth King Pharaoh. With a defiant roar of, "This is the end," he lunges forward to deliver a final flaming strike. The physical toll of the fight shows as Kazuya's hands grip the controllers with white-knuckled intensity. He thinks about the mountain of time he sacrificed just to reach this specific moment. The Pharaoh is visibly overwhelmed, raising its arms and curved weapon in a desperate attempt to block the incoming pressure. Kazuya's internal monologue drives him forward, fueled by the vow to finally become the strongest. He winds up a punch that ripples with kinetic speed, a blow designed to shatter the boss's final defenses once and for all. The game world erupts in a blinding flash as he unleashes the Aura Phoenix Fist. The Pharaoh's skeletal form is completely obliterated by the sheer force of the impact. In reality, Kazuya's bloodshot eye widens in a mix of exhaustion and triumph as he tightly clenches his fist, feeling the vibration of the finishing blow. A massive system notification confirms the impossible. Defeated. Behind the victorious avatar, the Pharaoh's remains dissolve into digital dust. Onlooking players are frozen in shock, unable to believe that someone conquered the unbeatable boss, using nothing but his fists. Kazuya stares at the reward screen, knowing that after all these years, the title of Fist King is finally his. The world of Versus Online is revealed as a massive VRMMO RPG where Kazuya has become a legendary figure. He walks through the crowded digital streets, a celebrity among the players who recognize his unique build. He looks at his scarred knuckles, remembering how he stubbornly stuck with the fist, the game's weakest weapon, and trained it to perfection. Just as the game's services were scheduled to end forever, he achieved his ultimate goal of defeating every single boss in the world. With his legacy cemented, the avatar reaches out and presses the log out button for the very last time. The scene shifts to the grim reality of a dark room where a gaunt bearded man pulls off his headset, whispering that he made it just in time. His body, neglected for weeks, finally gives out and he collapses onto the floor as his remaining strength evaporates. Lying immobile, he realizes the sheer scale of his neglect. He hasn't eaten properly in 2 weeks. As his vision starts to fail, he wonders if he's actually dying right there in his apartment. He accepts the darkness with a sense of peace, having no regrets because he achieved his life's goal. But as he fades away, a strange voice begins to call out to him from the void. A woman's face suddenly looms over him, telling him to wake up. Still reeling from his collapse, Kazuya is completely disoriented and stammers as she tells him he is finally awake. The woman pushes him to hurry up and get ready, ignoring his utter lack of recognition. She turns away to call out that Kazuya is awake, alerting another person in the house. Kazuya stares at his hands, which are youthful and healthy, before looking up at a man in the doorway and whispering, "Dad?" in total shock. He breaks out in a cold sweat, unable to process the impossible situation. Standing at the doorway, Kazuya looks into the kitchen and realizes he is in his parents' house. He looks at his mom and dad sitting at the table and recognizes them immediately. Shocked by the sight, he thinks that this can't be. He struggles to understand how he is back there since he left home over 10 years ago. He looks into the bathroom mirror and freezes when he sees a different face staring back. He screams in horror when he realizes the person in the mirror is him. He clutches his head in confusion because he is supposed to be 30 years old right now. Even though he looks like he is in his teens, he is interrupted by a news bulletin on the television. The news report announces an ongoing subjugation of monsters that appeared in Shinjuku. His parents watch the news calmly as his mom mentions that monsters have been appearing lately. Confused by their lack of panic, Kazuya asks his dad and mom what they are talking about. The television shows a close-up of a monster eye while the reporter wonders if it escaped from a training ground. A massive monster known as an evil boar stands in the middle of a destroyed city street. The guide explains that these boar-type monsters have tusks hard enough to pierce steel. Kazuya is visibly sweating as he tries to process that monsters exist in this world. His mom looks at him and simply comments on how scary it is. He retreats back into his room to think about what is going on. He notices something on his desk and lets out a confused hum. He picks up a school pamphlet for a swordsman middle school enrollment guide. The pamphlet describes different paths for swordsmen, magic users, and support roles. He is stunned that a game like School Like This actually exists in Japan. He realizes that in this world, people study at schools to learn how to fight monsters, and that he is about to enroll in that exact school. He closes the pamphlet and tells himself there are so many things he needs to confirm. He thinks about how he does not know the reason he came to this world, but he has a plan. Kazuya smiles as he realizes he can fight and declares that he will become the Fist King again. He looks out the window and thinks about how it is just like the game he used to play. Dragons fly across a mountain landscape in this strange new version of the world. Kazuya decides that now that he knows that he must do first things first. He looks down at his desk and prepares to grab his smartphone. He grabs his phone and decides it is time to gather intel. He realizes that he will be attending a middle school for his training. He looks at the details of the swordsman course and lets out a confused "huh." He reads that the course aims for students to learn Bash Level 5 and says, no way. The school guide explains the skills for swordsman magic and support courses over 3 years. He sees a video of the skills on his phone and realizes the movements are exactly the same as the game. He thinks that if this world has the same settings as the game, they are only learning beginner skills. His expression turns serious as he realizes they spend 3 whole years learning nothing but these basic techniques. Kazuya lies face down on his bed and thinks that he does not want to go to school. He wonders if there is any point in going at all since the curriculum only teaches basic skills. He turns on his side and lets out an "ah" while looking at his phone. He remembers being the Fist King in the game and thinks about how he would simply call out an icon to check his status. He takes a deep breath in through his mouth as he prepares to try a command. In a large horizontal panel, Kazuya screams status and open at the top of his lungs. He leaps around his room shouting status and wonders if the command is different. Mom suddenly appears at his door, telling him to be quiet because he is being way too loud. Kazuya looks at his mom and awkwardly asks if she knows how to open his status. Mom looks confused and asks if he is still talking about that game. She quickly realizes he is actually talking about the physical skill sheet and thinks for a moment. Mom holds out a document and confirms that she does indeed have it. She hands it over while explaining that he needs to submit it at the entrance ceremony and must not lose it. Kazuya takes the paper from her and tells her thanks. Kazuya stares at the paper and mutters well to himself. He feels incredibly nervous as he wonders what kind of skills are actually listed on his profile. The document for Kazuya Sato reveals his skill results. Level 2 sword proficiency, Level 1 gun proficiency, and a single acquired skill called Stamina Recovery up at Level 2. Kazuya is in total shock and thinks no way as he looks at the low numbers. He realizes with dread that his weapon proficiencies are far lower than he expected. He is disappointed to see he only has one real skill while his parents stand together in the background. He stares at the page in horror, wondering if he can even get into middle school with such poor results. Dad smiles and tells him that he will be able to learn many more skills once he starts school. Dad puts a supportive hand on his shoulder and tells him to simply do his best. Kazuya looks down at the paper and thinks to himself that it is no good. Kazuya imagines his old, powerful avatar fighting a monster and reflects that the world may be the same as the game. He realizes his current skills are those of a total beginner, making his goal of becoming the Fist King again feel like a dream within a dream. He worries that he cannot even beat small fry monsters, let alone clear a dungeon or defeat a boss. Dad notices Kazuya staring off into space and lets out a curious hum. Kazuya clenches his fist and looks at the floor, wondering if he even has the potential to get stronger when he is currently so weak. Dad keeps his hand on Kazuya's shoulder and asks what he is saying. Dad tells him it is okay because accepting your own weakness is actually the first step to getting stronger. Kazuya looks up as his dad promises him that he is going to get much stronger from now on. Kazuya clenches his fist again and tells his father thank you. Kazuya looks ahead with fresh determination and declares that he will get stronger. Both of his parents look on with happy smiles as his dad agrees with a simple, yeah. Dad hands him a new paper and tells him to go to this place starting tomorrow. Kazuya looks at the paper and sees it is a flyer for the grand opening of a training hall. A large building with a massive sign for the training hall stands at the end of a street. Kazuya looks at the bustling outdoor area where people are practicing and thinks it looks exactly like a game world. Kazuya grabs a wooden practice sword and gets extremely hyped as he feels the excitement of the training atmosphere. An old man with a mustache tells the crowd that rental weapons are free for those 15 and under, while Kazuya says God in amazement. Several practitioners are training at the hall, including a girl drinking from a water bottle while resting her practice sword on her shoulder. An old man at the counter hands a thick wooden training log to Kazuya, explaining that beginners use this for their practice. Kazuya examines a digital skill tree icon of the log and reflects that while a swordsman should normally only acquire sword-related skills, his own skill sheet is unique. Kazuya holds the wooden log and thinks about how his skill sheet included gun-type skills, an impossible combination in this world's standard system. He begins to swing the log with a determined look on his face. He realizes that although job classifications exist, there are no game-like restrictions on what skills he can acquire. So he decides to focus on learning a specific skill in the shortest time possible. Kazuya envisions mastering various abilities such as raising his proficiency in healing magic and maces. He focuses on learning a physical ability boost, believing that with enough effort, he should be able to learn it successfully. 8 hours later, Kazuya is still intensely swinging the log at a pile of wood scraps while repeatedly shouting heal as he strikes. He stops to catch his breath and realizes that simply praying for the effect isn't enough to trigger the healing magic. A close-up of the log shows blood dripping from Kazuya's hand due to the intensity of his constant training. As he looks down, Kazuya suddenly notices something unexpected and lets out a surprise, huh? Kazuya looks at his open palms in shock, noting that the bleeding has completely stopped. He examines his hand closely and realizes that he has successfully managed to use the heal skill. He observes that the skin on his hands is actively healing, though the effect seems to have reached its current limit. Kazuya looks at his hand and concludes that he has likely run out of mana for the time being. He reflects on his 8-hour practice session, noting that he was able to swing the mace more than his stamina should have allowed, and learned to use heal while practicing. The old trainer tells Kazuya not to push himself too hard, as Kazuya decides his next goal is to acquire a physical ability boost, despite his concerns about his mana capacity. 1 week later, Kazuya continues his relentless training routine at the hall. Other practitioners notice Kazuya and comment that the kid is back again. They discuss how he has been whacking that training log for over 8 hours every single day, with some onlookers expressing their amazement. One observer points out that Kazuya was also hitting the log until closing time the previous week. A close-up shows Kazuya's intense and sweat-drenched face, causing the onlookers to think he looks possessed. While an observer wonders what he is doing all this for, Kazuya's dark and focused expression reveals that he has become certain of something over the past week. Kazuya takes a break on a bench and thinks about how this world is structured by inheriting game settings to some extent. He realizes that the knowledge he gained from his gaming days can be applied directly in this reality. He reflects on his progress, noting that he successfully learned physical ability boost and can now swing a mace at full power for an hour. His next goal is to raise his mace proficiency to level 10. Kazuya looks over his shoulder as someone with long hair passes by in the background. A girl with a ponytail and a training sword is shown standing at the hall. Kazuya notices her and wonders if she is also there to practice with swords. He wonders if the man standing near her is her father. He thinks about how his own father just plays games all the time and that it is in his blood. Feeling tired of just smashing the log, Kazuya decides to try making a sculpture out of it instead. The girl looks at Kazuya and thinks that he is a weird kid. Her father observes Kazuya and comments that choosing a mace for practice is an interesting choice. The father and daughter watch Kazuya from behind. While the father notes he looks like he is practicing hard, the daughter feels it just looks like he is playing around. The girl watching Kazuya thinks those are the eyes of someone seriously dedicated to something. She thinks he will get stronger because he doesn't care at all what others think. Kazuya practices intensely and tells himself to try swinging without tensing up. He continues to practice with a loud yell while the girl watches him. Another week passes as he maintains his intense routine. Kazuya tries to carve the wood into a detailed monster, but it shatters under the weight of his swing. He is disappointed and yells it broke again, and it was almost finished. He lies on the ground and says, "I can't finish it at all, and why is this so hard?" He wonders if his mace proficiency is even going up. Kazuya thinks he has been trying to make one for a week but hasn't completed a single one. He realizes he has gotten to the point that he can use the mace with much less effort. The girl watches him and thinks that kid is here again and says, "I can't lose either." He thinks it would be much easier if he could just see his status and decides to try changing his practice method a bit. Kazuya loses his grip on the training log and yells as it flies out of his control. He stares in horror as he realizes the heavy wood is headed straight for the girl he saw practicing nearby. Kazuya desperately lunges forward and tells her to watch out as the log tumbles through the air. The girl begins to turn around and simply says, "Huh," as she is completely unaware of the danger. The log looms large over the girl while she lets out a scream of terror. Kazuya leaps in and yells for the log to get smashed as he prepares a desperate strike. He strikes the log and shatters it in an explosion of splinters and debris. Kazuya stands there sweating and says "wah" in total shock at what he just did. The fragments of wood fly past the girl while Kazuya recovers from his powerful swing. She looks up at him in absolute awe and simply says, "Whoa." Kazuya stands with his training weapon while the girl sits on the ground in front of him. He looks at the mace in shock and thinks about the incredible power and attack range. He realizes there is no doubt that this is Bash, which is the skill acquired at mace level 5. Kazuya realizes that his mace proficiency has finally gone up. He smiles as he concludes that all of his training was not a waste after all. The girl looks at him with a confused and surprised expression as he celebrates his success. Kazuya rushes over and asks if such a pretty lady is all right. But the girl just thinks that he's exactly the weird kid she expected him to be. The girl from the training grounds mentions that Kazuya will be a first-year student at First Swordsman Middle School starting in April. She introduces herself as Karen Tania and explains that she will be a third year at the same school. She tells him it is nice to meet him. Kazuya blushes as he thanks her and calls her Senior Tania. Karen says being called senior makes her blush and offers to help him if he is ever in trouble. Karen admits she has been wanting to talk to Kazuya for a while. Kazuya is surprised and asks if she meant him. She notes that he is out there every day smacking a log with a club for over 8 hours without fail. Karen mentions he is practically a local celebrity and notes he can even use Bash, which Kazuya admits he only just mastered today. Karen is shocked because she knows that skill normally takes 3 years to learn in school. Kazuya agrees while Karen tells him his progress is proof of all his hard work. Karen says she needs to step up her own game as well. Kazuya asks if she knows any other free places where he can swing a mace with all his might. He mentions that he has been buying logs with his allowance, but things are starting to get tight. Karen is surprised he's actually buying the logs. The instructor notes that while the rental items are cheap, the total cost likely adds up over time. Kazuya realizes he cannot get stronger if he is broke and feels down about his situation. Karen suggests that Kazuya try slaying monsters instead. She shows him a list of slime habitats in Shizuoka Prefecture on her phone. Karen tells him that since he can use Bash, he should be perfectly safe taking them down. Karen warns Kazuya to make sure he goes with a parent or guardian. Kazuya remembers slaying monsters in games to level up and earn gold and is amazed he can do that in reality. Karen adds that if he goes too far, he will run into horned rabbits. Kazuya begins his hunt by striking a slime hiding in the tall grass. Kazuya smashes through a slime and thinks the experience is awesome. He reflects that he can get real combat experience and level up his skills at the same time. He realizes he can even earn money and thinks it is like hitting 3 birds with 1 stone. 2 hours later, Kazuya takes a rest and thinks he has done enough for the day. He looks at his full bag of slime cores and notes that a 100% drop rate is nice. He realizes he will need to get a bigger and sturdier bag while deciding to head home for now. He hears a rustle behind him and lets out a confused sound. Kazuya looks over his shoulder as the rustling continues and sees a massive horned rabbit emerging from the bushes. He realizes he ventured a little too deep into the forest. The rabbit charges and Kazuya prepares to defend himself from the sudden attack. Kazuya swings his mace as the horned rabbit leaps through the air toward him. He is shocked by how fast the creature moves and realizes its speed is unreal. Kazuya thinks a vertical swing will be too hard to land on such a fast target. He adjusts his grip and decides to use a specific technique instead. Kazuya yells "Bash" and unleashes the skill directly against the charging rabbit. He hits the rabbit, but realizes that the strike connected too shallowly to finish it. The rabbit glares back at him with an intense, bloodshot gaze. Kazuya prepares his stance, but he is suddenly rattled when he realizes the status bars he relied on in the game are completely gone. The rabbit lunges forward again. Kazuya realizes it is too fast and thinks that countering from his current stance is going to be impossible. Seeing the sharp horn closing in, he realizes in a panic that he won't be able to make it out of the way in time. He lets out a sharp grunt of pain as the impact happens. The horned rabbit strikes, gashing the side of Kazuya's chest and sending blood flying as he grunts in pain. As the rabbit lands, Kazuya stands clutching the wound on his side, finally accepting the brutal truth that this is reality and not a game. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he calls out for his heal magic to stop the bleeding. Kazuya observes the rabbit's speed, noting that for a low-level mob, its attack speed is insanely high. The rabbit lunges again. Kazuya thinks that if he doesn't land a clean hit this time, he is dead. He prepares his weapon, deciding he has to draw the monster in as close as possible to land a decisive blow. A close-up of Kazuya's eye shows the reflection of the charging rabbit as it lunges directly at his face. The rabbit lets out a sharp screech as it charges, its horn coming within inches of Kazuya's chest. Kazuya grunts as he puts every ounce of focus into timing his counterattack. He lets out a ferocious roar, fully committed to his next strike. Kazuya screams with everything he has as he brings his club down in a massive slam directly onto the rabbit. The impact is total, completely crushing the horned rabbit into the ground in a spray of blood. Kazuya stands over the fallen monster, gasping for air and telling it not to move. The rabbit lies dead in the dirt. He stares at the carcass and realizes he actually did it. He touches his torn shirt and confirms his victory. Standing alone in the forest, he reflects on what would have happened if he had failed that hit. Kazuya envisions himself being killed, realizing that if he had mistimed his swing by even a fraction of a second, he would have died. He kneels by the rabbit and realizes he has to change his whole mindset because this world is a reality that only looks like a game. He decides to take the rabbit with him. He remembers Senior Tanya mentioned that he can cash in monster drops at the ward office. For about a week, Kazuya hunts in the slime nest from morning until night, sometimes taking down rabbits too. He cashes in his drops at the ward office, making nearly 100,000 yen in 1 week and thinking fighting monsters is way more fun than the training ground. His next goal is to buy a skill sheet, an item that lets him check his progress at home. He hunts for another full week to save up, and the receptionist thanks him for his constant monster subjugation efforts. The receptionist hands him the document and explains that he just needs to put a single drop of blood inside the frame to activate the skill sheet. Kazuya thanks her as she explains the sheet will display all his possessed skills. She mentions he has been a huge help to the ward office over the past 2 weeks. She reveals they have never had anyone bring in over 20 kilos of slime cores every single day, calling him a local celebrity while Kazuya laughs awkwardly. Kazuya's parents suddenly appear at the office. His mom calls out his name while his dad asks if it is really him. Kazuya is stunned to see them and gasps out, "Dad, Mom." His dad looks at him with intense confusion and asks what in the world he is doing there.